Shabbat Shalom, everyone. This week, the BBC announced that they will be playing Rule Britannia and Land of Hope and Glory only in orchestral form at the finale of the proms. Now, there was an uproar in this country because these songs are an institution for our nation. Now, from our perspective, Land of Hope and Glory is a very special song. And I'm here today to explain to you why Land of Hope and Glory is so meaningful to us as a British nation. At the beginning of this week's parasha of Ki Tetze, we read about the Eshet Yifat Toar. Says the Torah, when you go out to war against your enemies and you see amongst its captivity a woman who is beautiful and you will desire her, you may take her to yourself for a wife. You shall bring her to the midst of your house, and she shall weep for her father and her mother for a full month. Thereafter you may come to her and live with her, and she shall be a wife to you. Now, why does the Torah, which is the epitome of morality, why does the Torah allow us such barbaric behavior to be able to take a foreign woman from the battlefield, from our enemies, and force her back to our homes to be a spouse against her will? How could the Torah allow such behavior? Let me share with you what the Gemara in Kiddushin says. Had the Torah not offered our people such an opportunity, then they would have acted with even greater barbaric behavior. I want to tell you, until today, until this very day, typical armies across the world, they're in the battlefield and they act terribly, to the extent that even in 2013, the United Nations had to issue rules about warfare and dealing with women of the enemy, because many soldiers deal terribly, treat them with no morals and such a perverse nature. Now, our Torah, already thousands of years ago, laid down the rules, says the Gemara, as to how to act when you are overcome with desire. So listen to the way our sages break down the laws that I read for you in the Torah. Number one, and you shall take her as a wife, says the Ibn Ezra. She's not just an object for your gratification and fulfillment of your violent nature. No, if you desire her, then you take her as a wife. She's a human being. Number two, take her for yourself. Lecha, says the Sifri, you're not there to take spoils for your family and friends to take home with you. No, if you personally take a liking to her, then that's permissible. Number three, and bring her into your home, says the Ramban. There's no acting perversely on the battlefield. That's what regular soldiers do. Jewish soldiers don't act like that. You bring her home. If you want to privately have an intimate relationship with her, then that's a whole different scene now that the passion of the battlefield has subsided. Number four, when you bring her in, the first thing she gets to do is to mourn for her parents for a month. She's a human being. She's lost people. You have to view her as a human being, not as an object. Once you begin to see her as a human being, then you can have a relationship. If you've satisfied all these requirements, then you may take her as your wife. So you think, wow, the Torah was so far, thousands of years ahead of what even contemporary society has yet to be able to absorb. But still, when you think about it, when the Gemara describes this idea of what the Torah means, clearly by the time of the Gemara, it was already not such an acceptable idea to go onto the battlefield and act immorally. And yet when the Torah is given to our people in more ancient times, it's not so unusual. Think of Shimon and Levi, who decimated the kingdom of Shem, because that's how people acted in ancient times. And so the Torah has to come along to our people who may not have known better and say, no, this is not acceptable. God says, every human being is beloved in my eyes, and this is how you should treat other human beings. Now, why do we still need the laws like this in the Torah? Because the Torah is an eternal document. You see, the way most nations work is that with the evolution of thought and social acceptability, many people like to rewrite history. We were the perfect nation. We did everything wonderfully from the start. The others, the enemy, they were terrible. They were awful. They acted in such horrible ways, but we always did the right thing. We don't say that. We say that we are always on a path to growth, both personally and nationally. And the fact that the Torah says this means that we recognize we're not deleting history. We're not rewriting history. The Torah records this episode, these laws, for a number of reasons. Number one, because we don't rewrite history. We acknowledge who we were and where we came from. Number two, we're human beings that could always revert to our animalistic nature unless we're reminded in black and white in the Torah. Number three, there are always lessons to be learned on so many different levels. The Baal Shem Tov says that this is a lesson about our own personal internal battle that we face every day, the challenges and how we go about dealing with the people around us. So the Torah is eternal, it has an eternal message. Let's talk about land of hope and glory. Hope and glory are two terms that imply imperfection. First of all, hope. Hope in Hebrew, tikva. Ha-tikva happens to be the Israeli national anthem. But the Israeli national anthem, Ha-tikva, wasn't invented in 1948. We've all heard the famous recording of Holocaust survivors singing Ha-tikva in Bergen-Belsen. Bergen-Belsen, way before Ha-tikva, that was the hope that we would return to Israel. And then 1948 happened, and we returned to Israel. And yet we still sing Ha-tikva, the hope, because we know that we're not there yet. Hope represents the recognition, personally and nationally, that we still have a long way to go, that we will get there if we keep trying, making the effort to be better and better. Personally and nationally, we'll get there. But we're not there yet. What's glory? Glory in Hebrew is tiferet. Tiferet means magnificence, splendor, beauty. But tiferet is also the third of the great divine emanations, chesed, gvura, tiferet. Chesed represents loving kindness, abundance. Gvura represents severity, discipline. Tiferet is also translated as harmony. We want to be able to produce a harmonious relationship between these two opposing forces that we need. Both of them we need. We need to be able to act with abundance and loving kindness, but at the same time we also need discipline. How do we bring those two ideas together? Tiferet, harmony. Harmony is not a conclusion. Harmony, glory, tiferet is something that we strive for, that we seek, that we endeavor to accomplish personally and nationally. It's an ongoing process. And so, friends, we should be proud to be a land of hope and glory. These are things that we are committed to striving for as a British people. We don't believe that we're there. Certain countries deny the fact that they ever even engaged in colonialism. They sit there smugly, thinking that they have a message for the world that's perfect. Meanwhile, they live with vestiges of unresolved, murky history. That's kind of the difference between Germany and Japan after the Second World War. Germany was willing to face up to its demons. And as a result, it's been able to develop and educate itself, educate its children and grandchildren as to the right way. That's what we mean by land of hope and glory. We recognize that maybe we didn't get it right always in the past, but we're willing to acknowledge that, and we're willing to do better, and we're willing to continue on that journey towards becoming the ultimate country. The only way to become Great Britain is to recognize the mistakes we made along the journey of seeking greatness. Just like the story of the beautiful woman in our parsha, we don't delete our less than glorious past from the narrative. We acknowledge it and we commit to growing from it. And it's the same, friends, in our own lives. You want to acknowledge the mistakes that you've made in the past. Hope for a more harmonious future. May you never hide from being true to yourself. Acknowledge the missteps along your journey and seek harmony in every aspect of your life. Shabbat Shalom.